Okay, so what types of, I guess, like sexist comments have you seen made towards others or you, like, while growing up?
Growing up, I think it depends on kind of how and where and when you grew up. I grew up in a rural place in Missouri. I'm 36, so the 90s, I guess. It was a different, probably upbringing, quite a bit different from here and now. I would say that it's tough to think back and remember experiences or comments made to me because you have to learn about things like sexism before you can notice them and understand that they're wrong or that they shouldn't be happening to you. So I really think when I think about sexism, I remember things that happened later in my life. But growing up, I had pretty strong role models. My dad's a big feminist. I remember my mom telling me a lot to act like a lady. So that's kind of how I grew up. I was never very ladylike, so I got it a lot. Probably act like a good person or be polite might have been a better phrase, but that's kind of what sticks out from my childhood.
And do you think sexism has had any way, whether or not it's been during your upbringing or like during your later life, has that had any effect on the way that you teach now?
Kind of growing up remembering the strong students in my class being male and being someone who maybe knew the answer but didn't speak up quite as much. Probably same story from other female classmates. As far as school goes, I do see in my class I encourage young women to participate more and not to feel like your answer's wrong or that theirs is probably better. So I do think I maybe encourage them when I think that might be something that's holding them back from speaking up.
Has the culture around rape and sexual violence had any significant influence on the way you grew up and were taught to think?
I think it has had an effect on everyone, whether they know it or not. It creeps its way into our movies, our regular TV, all the media that we take in. Our language it has invaded us. But I think learning about it, people being aware of it, and men and women speaking up and creating awareness about it has helped a lot, especially just in the past year or so. It's affected the way we live, being uncomfortable in certain situations that as women we maybe shouldn't have to be uncomfortable in is probably the biggest thing for me, especially moving from a smaller place to a bigger place, walking at night places, or that notion that we should be on the lookout for someone or something and be ready for that rather than just teaching men and boys to avoid that behavior.
So all that being said, what do you hope to teach your children about sexism?
I have a son, so we've already started pretty early talking about there are no girl colors and boy colors, or girl toys and boy toys, even though everything you see in the store, the pink aisle and the rest of the toys, or any commercial on TV marketed toward kids. I think that despite all that, at home you can do a good job of just reinforcing those notions that it's just what we like, and it's not about if we're a boy or a girl, what toys or what things we can do and like and achieve. So that's important to me.
Regarding sexism, what significant differences do you see in the world that you grew up in versus the world that your son is going to grow up in?
That's a good question. I think when I was growing up, there was kind of a little bit of an awakening, especially in sport, because that was kind of like really important to me growing up. So I remember like being taken by my parents to the Final Four women's games in Kansas City, and there being a bunch of people there, and me kind of getting outside of my small town bubble and realizing, oh, look at all these fans of women's basketball, yet no one I know ever talks about that this is a thing or that this is worthy of such a fandom. And so I feel like it has a lot to do with place as well as time now. I think now it can be volatile. So unfortunately, we're almost in an era right now where there's pushback from being a feminist or being the culture that surrounds that for some reason. And I think just creating good information, passing along good information about what it is, not perpetuating any of the negative stereotypes around it is really important for, my son's 3, so I want him to grow up knowing the boundaries and not having filters or glasses on that make him perceive people as just male or female right off the bat and assuming a bunch of things about a person. So hopefully, I think, if people work toward awareness and good information, I think he'll grow up in a lot better time than I did, which I wouldn't consider bad, just growth.
Okay. And last question, how did strong female role models affect like your self-esteem as a girl growing up versus like people who might have not had that type of like model in their lives?
Yeah. Strong female role models, I have plenty to choose from. But I guess when I think of what caused me to think of women in an equal light and myself in an equal light, it was more the men reinforcing that notion, because for some reason it just carried more weight to me that they would not take advantage of or grasp onto power that they were automatically given as a man. But obviously, I would say female role models for me, obviously my mom, my grandma, just very funny, strong, hilarious, not necessarily very feminine figures, so different, and weren't afraid of that. And I think that affected me, and it just made me comfortable with that being who I was. And famous people, I don't know. I remember getting a pair of Swoops. You probably don't even know who Cheryl Swoops is, but it was like my Jordan. And the fact that she had a shoe out and it was making money was a big deal. And so I remember thinking, weird. This is like a turning point for us even in marketing. So yeah, and now when you turn on commercials, when you see a Gatorade commercial, you'll see half the athletes in the commercial be women. So I think that's progress.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.